What's up, peoples? It's Gendo here, and I bet you weren't expecting this episode, now were ya? Yes, this is going to be officially the final episode in the Chicago Fire series. It's a post-mortem. It's an epilogue, if you will, on what exactly happened to the Chicago Fire after we went off the air, after we won the Champions League. And it's just basically going to be showing how did we do this past season, and it's going to stop at the end of the MLS Cup. So how did we do in the regular season? The Cup, the US Open Cup, the Club World Cup, since of course we did qualify for that after winning the Champions League. Let's start first things first. How did we do in the regular season? Okay, so as not to spoil it right away, I'm going to show you how we did schedule-wise before showing the actual table. And I have highlighted the first match after we won the Champions League final. And as you can see, 4 straight draws to come out of the gate after winning the Champions League final. FC Dallas, Sporting KC, Vancouver, Colorado. Can't believe that after the absolute high of winning the Champions League, we come out and rattle off 4 straight draws. Mind you, after that, we rattled off 4 wins out of the next 5. So, in essence, 9, in fact, 10 matches unbeaten in the league before we suffered our next 2 defeats against New England and Atlanta United. But then we wouldn't see another loss again until 3 months later against Portland, and that would have been our last loss in the season. So, overall, we did very well for ourselves following the Champions League. And also, we did fairly well for ourselves in the month of July, because during that time, that was also the Gold Cup. We lost a lot of players on the American side, on the Trinidad side, because Kevin Molino was on that squad as well. But yeah, we really had to scramble to try and get players that could play not just in the MLS but also in the US Open Cup, and we'll get to that in just a little bit as well. And in that run of form where we did see only 3 losses after winning that Champions League final, we once again won the Eastern Conference and the Supporter Shield, this time with 71 points through 34 matches. 21-8-5 is our final record. Our nearest closest rival was Sporting KC, who were 7 points behind us, and our nearest closest rival within our conference, New England, sitting down there in 5th place with 53 points. We absolutely ran away with this conference this year. In fact, I thought for sure Portland were going to come out on top of the Supporter Shield, but they faded, and they faded fast once the Gold Cup came around, and we just surged right past them to the top of the spot, and we didn't give it up since. So as it stands, as you can see, we won the Supporter Shield, which means automatic top spot in the playoffs for our Eastern Conference, and of course automatic spot into the Champions League next season. But now what does this all mean? Of course, now we got ourselves into the playoffs. How did we do in the playoffs? So we're going to show you round by round from when we first started. It was the Final 4 of the Eastern Conference, in which the Final 4 teams were us, the New York Red Bulls, Orlando City, and the New England Revolution, which we promptly handed the Red Bulls their asses by beating them on aggregate 5-2. It really was not any sort of match. We beat them 4-1 away from home to start it off. So it was like, okay, 4 away goals. We got ourselves enough to see us through to the next round. They aren't going to get 4 goals in the second leg, of which it finished 1-1. So that saw us through to the Eastern Conference Finals, which we then took on one of our main rivals in the New England Revolution. Of course, in the New England Revolution, we beat them on aggregate by the final score of 3-1. The very first leg was 2-0, and it was once again a 1-1 at home, which saw us through to the MLS Cup final for the 3rd straight year. Will we have won it again? Did we win it again? Our opponents would be a little bit tougher. As you can see in the Western Conference final, it came down to FC Dallas versus Sporting KC, and FC Dallas beat them by the final score of 6-3, which means that we were taking on FC Dallas in the MLS Cup final. It's a Brimstone Cup final. It's an MLS Cup manufactured rivalry, but it's a rivalry nonetheless in the MLS Cup final. And how exactly did it play out? Well, after 120 minutes, we found ourselves scoreless against FC Dallas. Yes, we didn't take as many shots as them, but we still had double digits with 5 on target and 61% possession of the ball. But it is not to be. We could not have gotten the three-peat this time around, as FC Dallas beat us on penalties by the score of 4-2. We had Trotta and Solonyak as our only goal scorers, with Kevin Molino and Harris Belkebla missing on both of their attempts. In fact, Molino hit his off the crossbar. Belkebla smacked it off of the goalkeeper. So yeah, we didn't have the best of penalty takers going today, and that's what ultimately cost us as FC Dallas win the MLS Cup this time around. We were runners-up. We couldn't get 3 in a row, but hey, it was a decent run. And one thing you gotta notice here is the MLS Cup final actually took place after the Club World Cup. As you can see, the final date, January 1st of 2020. I've never seen an MLS Cup go this late, but I feel like because the scheduled MLS Cup final would have taken place, I want to say the 14th or the 15th of December, that was already within the Club World Cup and their dates of when they were actually taking place, so that's why it got pushed until afterwards. So, with that being said, let's take a look and see how we did in the Club World Cup. So in our very first match in the quarterfinal round, we got drawn against Uwara Red Diamonds, who come out of the Japanese J-League, and even though Belkebla was a dumbass and got himself a straight red in the 3rd minute, we somehow came away with a 1-0 win after David Akam slotting one home after going one-on-one with the goalkeeper, seeing us through to the semifinals. And to be quite honest with you, Uwara Red Diamonds, I didn't think that they would have put up that much of a fight, but once we got down to 10 men, they were just coming at us full force to try and get themselves a win. But fortunately for us, we were able to put one past them and then shut up shop to come away with a win and go on to the semifinals, which we then took on Palmeiras out of Brazil, and we somehow come away 2-0 victors over the Brazilian champions, the Copa Libertadores champions of this past year, with David Akam once again being the man with the plan, scoring both goals for the Fire once again in the 35th and in stoppage time at the end of the first half. Palmeiras did, once again, like Uwara Reds, throw many men forward. Even though it was 11 on 11 this time, Palmeiras had more shots, Palmeiras had more of the possession, but we were able to counterattack both times to come away with both goals and see ourselves through to the Club World Cup final. An unprecedented match, an unprecedented showing for a first-time team in Chicago Fire. And who exactly did we face? Well, it was a team by the name of Manchester City, as they were able to demolish us by the score of 4-0. Hey, I gotta give the guys credit though. We were able to hold them scoreless for the first half hour before Aguero scored, and then after that, holding them to just 1 goal for another 50 minutes while we had a couple of decent chances to equalize. Hey, I gotta give the guys credit. I can't fault them for being tired against a top Premier League side. Hell, once the 80th minute came around, that's when the floodgates opened and Manchester City threw 3 past us. And like I said, I can't fault the guys because I feel like the defense just got tired. Anybody would have gotten tired against a team like Manchester City in this situation. Iheanacho getting a brace, Bernardeschi getting 1 more. I feel like 4-0 is a little too harsh because we did so well to stop them for the majority of the match. Hell, I would have been fine with a 2-0 final. I would have been fine with a 2-0 final because I feel like that would have been more representative. Give Iheanacho his goal because, hell, I would have been fine with a 2-0 final. Give Iheanacho his goal because he definitely deserved one of them, but the other two, that was just a little too much icing on that cake. But overall, we made the Club World Cup final, and to come away losers against Manchester City, expected. But hey, we made it to a final, and that's something that I can't take away from these guys. They did well. They did very well to get to the final. They did very well to get to the final They did very well to get to the final and leaving me astonished because I didn't think we were going to get to the final after taking on Palmeiras. And if you're wondering how we did in the US Open Cup, we bottled it again. And of course, finally, the CONCACAF Champions League. It takes place in the second half of our regular season. Who did we draw against and how did everyone else in the groups around us do? As you can clearly see in the top 6, you got 3 Mexican teams already going through: Santos Laguna, Veracruz, and Tigres. Then Portland, San Jose, and Real España in a group with Águila and DC United. Yes, the same DC United that just took us out of the MLS Cup. They went undefeated in the group. So that is probably the first time in a long time that a Honduran team has made it to the knockout stage of a Champions League. Real España going through. Now the bottom two, as you can see, Monterrey coming forth as the 4th Mexican team, but At the very bottom, Chicago have come out of a group that consisted of Toronto FC and Saprissa out of Costa Rica, and we ourselves went undefeated as well. 4 wins, 0 draws, 0 losses, seeing us through to the quarterfinals once again. And the board expect us to actually make it to the semifinals, which is going to be admittedly a little tough because we are going to be taking on Veracruz in the quarterfinals. Veracruz, I'm not quite sure how well they are in the Mexican leagues. I think last I checked, they were a middle-of-the-road Mexican side. But hell, if they made the Champions League, they got to be doing something right. So can't put anything past them if I decide to continue this on and to see how well we do in the Champions League then. But us, making it to the quarterfinals once again, taking on a Mexican side, it was to be expected. Now, before we get into our final stats for the season, we got to go over a couple of transfers that were necessarily made. The first one was basically for cover of Iko Para because he tore his damn ACL in June and he was out for the rest of the season, 8 to 9 month injury. And the second loan in was basically a cover because of all of our midfielders that we just did not have once the Gold Cup came around. So first and foremost, the cover for Iko Para, Tosin Adarabioyo. Adarabioyo is coming in from Manchester City, and just taking a look at some of his stats, he was almost Iko Para to a T. At 22 years old, he is coming in on loan. Yes, we did pay his full salary, $70,000 per the year, and just taking a look at some of his stats, 13 marking, 13 tackling, 14 positioning, great physically, great in the speed department, okay technically and okay mentally, but he's 22 years old, still has a lot of time to develop on that front. But like I said, I needed somebody to cover for Ike, and this guy is almost a carbon copy of Ike, but 8 years younger. A great pickup. He did play in a few matches, 14 total, and got himself a 705 average rating. No goals, no assists, but helped out immensely on the defensive side. Okay, now don't laugh. Don't laugh. James Murphy was the only option that I could bring in the center mid spot because I had taken up all my international slots and needed to go after American players. So James Murphy was the best one out there that was American that I can bring in. He was loaned in from Sheffield Wednesday, and as you can see, also 22 years old, decent in the speed department, decent technically as well, 12 dribbling, 12 technique, 14 passing. He didn't really have much else, but at least he could deliver the ball. He could distribute the ball forward and set up some attacks. But yeah, he was going to be a backup the entire way, and that's exactly what I needed. I needed depth in the center mid. I had no depth at the start of the season. I had 4 players that could play any sort of position in the midfield, and that's really why I brought James in for the second half of the season, because 2 of my midfielders were out due to international duty, so I had to bring him in as cover. Now, I actually had to go back to a previous save to look at the goals and the assists for last season, because once I finished the MLS Cup, it was the 1st of January, all the stats reset, everything ticked over, so I couldn't take a look at them. So these might not be accurate, but they are as close to accurate as possible. So taking a look at the final goal tally, Marcelo Trotta, 27 goals for the club in 36 appearances before he got his untimely injury. He got injured before the Manchester City match, so he was out for that, and he was out for the FC Dallas match. We desperately needed him, and we didn't even have Christian Ramirez either, because after the Manchester City match, Christian Ramirez got injured, so we were just left with Luis Solniak up front, which could be the reason why we didn't have any goals in the FC Dallas match. But that's beside the point. As you can clearly see, 27 goals for Trotta, 19 for Kevin Molino, the talisman, 14 for Akam, and 12 for Andres Escobar, with the next closest being Christian Ramirez with 9. Very, very surprising that Christian Ramirez, after last season, only getting 9 goals. Taking a look at the total assists, and of course you would expect it to be a winger in David Akam being the leading man. 18 assists for him. Andre Hurtado with the runner-up in 10. And Marcelo Trotta, surprisingly striker, Marcelo Trotta with 9 assists. Would have expected another winger. You got Escobar there with 8. You got Rodrigo Ramos there with 8. And Ramos was one of our top assisters last season, continuing his trend this season as well. And then taking a look at overall average rating, I would want to say it's either Molino or Akam, and it is in fact Kevin Molino first with a 7.56 and David Akam second with a 7.50. Marcelo Trotta 7.48, Ramos 7.44, Andre Hurtado 734. One final thing before I go, just as a reminder, I do have my 2-year anniversary coming up, and I want to do a question and answer session, so get your questions out there. Hashtag AskGendo when you ask it. Put it either on YouTube or on Twitter, and I'll put it in a compilation video. So final time before I go off on my trip, and then I'll compile everything when I come back. So now this is the official end to the Chicago Fire series. Once again, I hope that you enjoyed what you saw, and as always, guys, if you like what you saw, go and smash that like button. Lets me know that you're interested in this series, and subscribe if you're new and you're interested in more FM content on the channel. Comments below, and as always, guys, this is Gendo, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, and peace out.